Have you ever stopped to think that the blood flowing through your veins carries more than just cells and oxygen? There's a deep and disturbing connection between your blood type and the most primitive aspects of your personality that conventional science refuses to explore. While doctors focus only on the clinical aspects of blood, a deeper analysis reveals shockingly consistent patterns between blood types and personality traits. When we apply Carl Jung's revolutionary theories about archetypes and the collective unconscious to this discovery, a truth emerges that may shock you. Your blood type isn't just a genetic coincidence. It's a coded map of the primordial archetypes that dominate your psyche. Each type carries within it an ancestral heritage that secretly shapes your deepest fears, desires, and most intimate behaviors. Prepare yourself for a disturbing journey through the mysteries of the human soul. What you'll discover about yourself may be devastating, but it's essential to understand who you really are. 1. The blood mystery that science ignores. For centuries, humanity has searched for the key to understanding the deepest layers of personality and behavior. Ancient civilizations looked to the stars. Medieval scholars examined the humors, and modern psychology dissects the mind through endless theories. Yet there's one fundamental aspect of human nature that has been hiding in plain sight, coursing through our very veins every second of our lives. The scientific community has reduced blood to nothing more than a transportation system, a biological highway for oxygen, nutrients, and waste products. They've categorized it into neat little boxes: A, B, AB, and O, with positive or negative Rh factors. Case closed. But what if this reductive approach has blinded us to one of the most profound secrets of human nature? When we examine the emerging patterns between blood types and personality traits through the lens of Carl Jung's groundbreaking work on archetypes, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Jung discovered that within the collective unconscious lie primordial patterns of behavior, ancient blueprints that shape how we perceive the world, react to challenges, and connect with others. These archetypes aren't random psychological constructs. They're deeply embedded codes that have guided human behavior for millennia. What's fascinating is how these archetypal patterns seem to align with blood type distributions across different populations and cultures. The warrior cultures of ancient times show higher concentrations of certain blood types, while agricultural societies display different patterns entirely. This isn't mere coincidence. It's evidence of a deeper biological and psychological connection that mainstream science has been too narrow-minded to explore. Consider this. Your blood type was determined long before your first breath, encoded in your DNA by ancestors you'll never meet. Yet somehow, people with the same blood type across completely different cultures, backgrounds, and time periods display remarkably similar behavioral patterns, emotional responses, and even life choices. How can this be explained by mere genetic coincidence? The answer lies in understanding that blood isn't just a biological fluid. It's a carrier of archetypal information. Each blood type represents a different evolutionary strategy, a unique approach to survival that has been refined over thousands of generations. These strategies don't just affect how your body processes nutrients or fights diseases. They fundamentally shape how your psyche approaches life itself. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious suggests that we inherit not just physical traits from our ancestors, but psychological ones as well. If this is true, then our blood type becomes a biological fingerprint of our deepest psychological inheritance, a code that reveals which archetypal energies dominate our inner landscape. This revelation is uncomfortable for those who prefer to believe that personality is entirely shaped by environment and conscious choice. It suggests that certain aspects of who we are, our core drives, our instinctive responses, our deepest fears and desires, are written in our blood before we're even born. It means that the mask of civilization we wear daily is constantly at odds with more primitive, archetypal forces that pulse through our veins. The implications are staggering. If blood type truly correlates with archetypal patterns, then understanding your blood type becomes a powerful tool for self-awareness and personal transformation. It explains why certain people naturally gravitate toward leadership while others prefer to follow, why some thrive in chaos while others crave order, why certain individuals seem born for conflict while others seek harmony at all costs. 2. Type O, the primitive warrior within you. If you carry Type O blood, you are the descendant of humanity's first hunters, the original survivors who carved civilization from the wilderness with nothing but raw determination and primal instinct. This isn't poetic metaphor. It's a biological reality encoded in every drop of blood that flows through your veins. Type O is the oldest blood type, the foundation from which all others evolved. When Jung spoke of the hero archetype, that primal pattern of the individual who ventures into the unknown, faces danger, and emerges transformed, he might as well have been describing the Type O soul. You carry within you the concentrated essence of humanity's warrior spirit, refined through countless generations of ancestors who survived by being stronger, faster, and more ruthless than their competition. This archetypal inheritance manifests in ways that may surprise you. Type O individuals rarely back down from confrontation, not because they're naturally aggressive, but because retreat triggers a deep, almost cellular anxiety. Your blood remembers when backing down meant death, when showing weakness invited predators, when hesitation was the difference between eating and being eaten. This is why you feel most alive during challenges that would paralyze others. The warrior archetype within you doesn't just crave physical challenges, it demands purpose and meaning that transcends the mundane. You're driven by an almost compulsive need to protect, to lead, to take action when others freeze in uncertainty. This isn't learned behavior. It's archetypal programming that runs deeper than conscious thought. When crisis strikes, while others panic or deliberate, you instinctively move toward the danger, not away from it. But this primitive power comes with a dark shadow that Jung would have recognized immediately. The same archetypal energy that makes you a natural leader can also make you impatient with those you perceive as weak or indecisive. You may find yourself becoming frustrated with people who overthink situations that seem obvious to you, or who seem paralyzed by fears that strike you as insignificant. Your Type O blood carries the memory of times when quick decisions meant survival, when there was no luxury of prolonged analysis or committee discussions. This creates an internal tension in our modern world, where collaboration and consensus are often valued over decisive action. You may feel like a warrior trapped in a diplomat's world, forced to suppress your natural instincts in favor of social niceties that feel artificial and wasteful. The shadow side of your warrior archetype can manifest as impatience, intolerance, or even unconscious bullying behavior toward those you perceive as weak. You might find yourself drawn to conflict even when it's unnecessary, simply because your psyche craves the familiar territory of challenge and conquest. Understanding this shadow is crucial for Type O individuals who want to channel their archetypal energy constructively rather than destructively. Jung emphasized that every archetype contains both creative and destructive potential. For Type O individuals, the key lies in learning to distinguish between battles worth fighting and conflicts that arise from your psyche's need to feel engaged in meaningful struggle. Your warrior energy, when properly directed, can achieve extraordinary things. You can literally move mountains when you're aligned with a cause that resonates with your deepest values. The biological reality of Type O blood supports this psychological profile in fascinating ways. Type O individuals typically have higher levels of stomach acid, allowing them to digest proteins more efficiently, a trait that would have been crucial for hunter ancestors who relied heavily on meat. You may find that you feel more energetic and mentally sharp when consuming protein-rich foods, while carb-heavy meals leave you feeling sluggish and unfocused. Your stress response system is also calibrated differently. Where other blood types may experience chronic low-level anxiety, Type O individuals tend to have more intense but shorter stress cycles, exactly what you'd expect from someone whose ancestors needed to mobilize quickly for immediate threats, but then return to baseline once the danger passed. This physiological programming affects everything from your sleep patterns to your social preferences. You probably find that you sleep more soundly after physical exertion, that you think more clearly when you're moving, and that you feel most confident when you're taking action rather than sitting in meetings or engaging in theoretical discussions. The Type O soul craves authenticity above all else. You can usually spot fake behavior or hidden agendas from a mile away, not through superior intelligence, but through an almost animal instinct that Jung would have attributed to your connection with the collective unconscious. This gift can make you an excellent judge of character, but it can also make you impatient with the social games and political maneuvering that dominate many professional and social environments. 3. Type A, the tormented perfectionist. If Type O represents humanity's primal warrior, then Type A embodies the emergence of civilization itself, but at a psychological cost that runs deeper than most people realize. You are the architect of order in a chaotic world, the keeper of standards in a society that increasingly celebrates mediocrity. Yet this noble calling comes with a shadow so profound that it can consume you from within if left unexamined. Type A blood emerged as humanity transitioned from hunter-gatherer societies to agricultural civilizations. This wasn't just a dietary shift. It was a complete transformation of human consciousness. Your ancestors were the first to understand that survival depended not on individual strength but on collective cooperation, careful planning, and meticulous attention to detail. They learned to read the seasons, to store grain for winter, to create complex social hierarchies that could sustain large populations. This archetypal inheritance manifests in your psyche as an almost compulsive need for order, structure, and perfection. You don't just prefer things to be organized, you feel genuine distress when they're not. This isn't mere preference, it's a deep psychological imperative that Jung would have recognized as an archetypal pattern. Your nervous system is literally calibrated to detect chaos and respond with anxiety until order is restored. The Type A personality carries what Jung called the caregiver archetype, but with a twist that makes it both powerful and potentially destructive. You don't just want to help others. You want to perfect them, to save them from their own mistakes, to create systems that will prevent future problems. This drive toward perfection extends to every area of your life, from your appearance to your work performance to your relationships. But here's where the torment begins. The same psychological programming that makes you excellent at creating order also makes you hypersensitive to anything that disrupts it. You may find yourself lying awake at night replaying conversations, analyzing what you could have said differently, or worrying about problems that exist only in your imagination. Your mind becomes a constant churning machine of analysis, criticism, and improvement strategies. The shadow side of the Type A archetype is particularly insidious because it disguises itself as virtue. Your perfectionism feels noble. After all, you're trying to make things better. Your tendency to take on too much responsibility seems generous. You're helping others succeed. Your chronic worry appears caring. You're looking out for everyone's well-being. But Jung understood that every virtue, when taken to extremes, becomes a vice. Your Type A blood carries genetic memories of ancestors who survived by being hypervigilant, by anticipating problems before they occurred, by maintaining social harmony at all costs. This creates a psychological profile that's simultaneously admirable and exhausting. You're the person others turn to when they need something done right, but you're also the person who suffers most when things go wrong. The biological reality of type A blood supports this psychological profile in fascinating ways. Type A individuals typically produce higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, even during normal daily activities. Your nervous system is essentially calibrated for chronic low-level anxiety, which explains why you may feel on edge, even when everything appears to be going well. This constant state of alertness served your agricultural ancestors well. They needed to monitor crops, weather patterns, and social dynamics continuously to ensure survival. But in our modern world, this same biological programming can lead to chronic stress, perfectionism paralysis, and what Jung would have called neurotic suffering, pain that serves no constructive purpose. The type A soul is caught in a perpetual tension between the desire to control outcomes and the reality that most of life is unpredictable. You may find yourself creating elaborate plans and backup plans, only to feel frustrated when unexpected variables disrupt your carefully constructed systems. This isn't a character flaw. It's an archetypal pattern that's been reinforced through thousands of generations. Understanding this pattern is crucial because it reveals both your greatest strength and your most dangerous weakness. Your ability to see potential problems and create solutions is genuinely valuable. Society needs people who can think ahead, organize resources, and maintain standards. But when this gift becomes compulsive, when you can't turn off the analytical mind, when every imperfection becomes a crisis, then your strength becomes your prison. Jung developed powerful techniques for integrating these shadow aspects of personality, and one of his most effective methods was what he called active imagination, a practice that allows you to dialogue with the unconscious parts of your psyche. For type A individuals struggling with perfectionism and chronic anxiety, Jung's SIM method offers a structured approach to finding inner peace and mental clarity in just 5 minutes a day. This technique helps you illuminate your mind, integrate your shadow, and discover the tranquility that exists beneath your constant mental chatter. You can find the link to learn more in the first pinned comment below. The key to healing the type A torment lies in understanding that your perfectionism is actually a defense mechanism against deeper fears of inadequacy and loss of control. When you can recognize this pattern and work with it consciously, rather than being driven by it unconsciously, you can transform your greatest weakness into your most powerful tool for personal growth and contribution to the world. 4. Type B, the misunderstood rebel. Of all the blood types, type B carries perhaps the most complex and contradictory archetypal inheritance. You are the eternal outsider, the one who sees what others miss. The individual who refuses to be boxed into conventional categories. But this gift of independence comes with a price that few people understand. The burden of being perpetually misunderstood by a world that values conformity over authenticity. Type B blood emerged in the nomadic peoples of the Asian steppes, those restless wanderers who refused to be tied down by the agricultural settlements that defined Type A societies. Your ancestors were the traders, the explorers, the bridge builders between different cultures and ways of thinking. They survived not through brute force like Type O warriors, nor through careful planning like Type A farmers, but through adaptability, creativity, and an almost supernatural ability to find opportunities where others saw only obstacles. This nomadic inheritance lives on in your psyche as what Jung would have recognized as the sage archetype, the eternal seeker of truth and wisdom. But unlike the traditional image of a wise elder sitting in meditation, The type B sage is dynamic, restless, always moving toward the next discovery or insight. You don't just think outside the box. You often forget the box exists entirely. Your archetypal pattern manifests as an almost compulsive need for mental and emotional freedom. You feel suffocated by rigid structures, standardized procedures, and social expectations that don't make logical sense to you. This isn't rebelliousness for its own sake. It's a deep psychological imperative to remain flexible and adaptable in a world that's constantly changing. The type B mind operates differently from other blood types in ways that often confuse and frustrate those around you. While type O individuals think in terms of action and results, and type A personalities focus on systems and perfection, you think in terms of possibilities and connections. You can see patterns and relationships that remain invisible to others, but you may struggle to explain your insights in ways that more linear thinkers can understand. This gift of pattern recognition makes you naturally innovative and creative, but it also creates a profound sense of isolation. You may find yourself having conversations where you're 3 steps ahead of everyone else, seeing implications and possibilities that won't become obvious to others for months or years. This can make you feel like you're speaking a different language, even when you're using the same words as everyone else. The shadow side of the type B archetype is particularly challenging because it stems from your greatest strength, your independence. The same psychological programming that makes you innovative and adaptable can also make you appear unreliable, unpredictable, or even selfish to those who value stability and consistency. You may start projects with great enthusiasm only to abandon them when something more interesting captures your attention. Your nomadic ancestors survived by being able to quickly assess new situations and adapt their strategies accordingly. This created a psychological profile that's highly flexible, but also prone to what others might perceive as inconsistency. You're not fickle. You're responsive to changing circumstances in ways that more rigid personalities simply cannot understand. The type B soul craves authenticity and genuine connection, but paradoxically, your need for independence can make deep relationships challenging. You want to be close to others, but not at the cost of your freedom. You value loyalty, but you define it differently than most people. For you, true loyalty means accepting someone as they are, including their need to grow and change, rather than trying to lock them into a fixed identity or role. This creates a painful tension that Jung would have recognized immediately. Your heart yearns for connection and understanding, but your spirit demands the freedom to be authentically yourself. In a world that often equates love with possession and commitment with conformity, you may feel like you have to choose between meaningful relationships and personal integrity. The biological reality of type B blood supports this psychological profile in fascinating ways. Type B individuals often have more balanced cortisol levels than type A personalities, but higher sensitivity to dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with novelty seeking and reward. This means you're naturally drawn to new experiences and may feel restless or depressed when your life becomes too routine or predictable. Your immune system also tends to be more adaptable than other blood types, able to adjust to new environments and challenges more quickly. This biological flexibility mirrors your psychological adaptability, but it also means you may be more sensitive to stress when you're forced into rigid or confining situations. The type B archetype carries what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to bridge opposites and find creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. You can hold contradictory ideas in your mind simultaneously without feeling the need to resolve them immediately. This makes you an excellent mediator, counselor, or advisor, but it can also make you appear indecisive to those who prefer black and white thinking. Your greatest gift is your ability to see the bigger picture while remaining flexible enough to adapt as new information becomes available. In a rapidly changing world, This archetypal pattern is becoming increasingly valuable. You're not just ahead of your time. You're uniquely equipped to help others navigate the complexity and uncertainty that define modern life. But to fulfill this potential, you must first learn to value your own unique perspective instead of trying to conform to others' expectations. The world needs what you have to offer, even if it doesn't always know how to ask for it or appreciate it when it's given. 5. Type AB, the soul divided between worlds. If the other blood types represent distinct archetypal patterns, Type AB represents something far more complex and potentially more powerful: the integration of opposing forces within a single psyche. You are the living embodiment of what Jung called the transcendent function, the rare individual who carries multiple archetypal energies simultaneously. But this gift comes with a psychological burden that can either elevate you to extraordinary heights or tear you apart from within. Type AB is the newest and rarest blood type, representing only about 4% of the global population. Your blood literally contains the genetic material of both Type A and Type B ancestors, creating a biological paradox that mirrors your psychological complexity. You are simultaneously the careful planner and the spontaneous adventurer, the perfectionist and the rebel, the one who craves order and the one who thrives in chaos. This dual nature manifests in your psyche as what Jung would have recognized as the magician archetype, the transformer who can work with opposing energies to create something entirely new. But unlike the traditional image of a wise wizard in a tower, your magic lies in your ability to navigate between different worlds, different perspectives, different ways of being, often within the same day or even the same conversation. Your archetypal inheritance creates a psychological profile that's both fascinating and exhausting. You may find yourself switching between Type A perfectionism and Type B flexibility depending on the situation, the people you're with, or even your mood. This isn't inconsistency. It's a sophisticated adaptive mechanism that allows you to respond appropriately to vastly different circumstances. The Type AB soul experiences what Jung called the tension of the opposites more intensely than any other blood type. You can simultaneously understand the Type O need for direct action and the Type A need for careful planning. You can appreciate the Type B desire for freedom while also recognizing the value of commitment and stability. This makes you an exceptional counselor, mediator, or advisor, but it can also leave you feeling perpetually torn between different aspects of your own nature. The shadow side of the Type AB archetype is particularly complex because it involves the shadow aspects of multiple archetypal patterns. You may experience the Type A tendency toward perfectionism and anxiety alongside the Type B inclination toward restlessness and independence. This can create internal conflicts that feel impossible to resolve. Part of you wants to plan every detail, while another part wants to throw caution to the wind and follow your impulses. Your Type AB blood carries the biological markers of both agricultural settlers and nomadic wanderers, creating a genetic memory that's rich but contradictory. Your ancestors were the bridge builders, the diplomats, the individuals who could move between different cultures and find common ground. They survived not through specialization but through synthesis, the ability to take the best from different approaches and create something new. This synthesizing ability is perhaps your greatest gift, but it's also the source of your deepest confusion. In a world that values specialization and clear categories, you may feel like you don't quite fit anywhere. You're too structured for the free spirits and too flexible for the planners, too intense for the easygoing, and too adaptable for those who prefer consistency. The biological reality of Type AB blood creates some fascinating physiological patterns that mirror your psychological complexity. You may find that your energy levels, sleep patterns, and even dietary needs vary more than other blood types. What works for you one week might leave you feeling depleted the next. This isn't inconsistency. It's evidence of your body's sophisticated ability to adapt to changing internal and external conditions. Your immune system also displays this complexity, showing both the vigilance of type A blood and the adaptability of type B. This can make you more resilient in some ways, but also more sensitive to stress when your different archetypal energies are in conflict rather than harmony. The type AB psyche operates according to what Jung called the principle of compensation. When one aspect of your personality becomes too dominant, your unconscious mind automatically activates opposing energies to restore balance. This can create bewildering mood swings or personality shifts that confuse both you and those around you, but it's actually evidence of your psyche's sophisticated self-regulating mechanism. Understanding this pattern is crucial because it explains why traditional advice about consistency and finding your passion may not work for you. Your path is not about choosing between your different aspects, but about learning to orchestrate them consciously. You're not meant to be consistent in the way other people understand consistency. You're meant to be dynamically balanced, able to access different aspects of your nature as circumstances require. The type AB soul is here to demonstrate that human nature is not fixed or limited to single archetypal patterns. You represent the future of human consciousness, the integration of opposites that creates something greater than the sum of its parts. But to fulfill this potential, you must first learn to embrace your complexity rather than seeing it as a flaw to be corrected. Your greatest challenge is learning to trust your own shifting nature instead of trying to force yourself into the more predictable patterns that work for other blood types. When you can accept and work with your dual nature, you become capable of insights and achievements that remain impossible for more specialized personalities. 6. The RH factor, the secret code of your essence. While most people focus on the letters of their blood type, AB, AB, or O, there exists a hidden dimension that reveals perhaps the most profound secrets about your deepest psychological nature. The RH factor, that seemingly simple positive or negative designation, carries within it an archetypal inheritance so ancient and powerful that it predates all other blood type distinctions. This is the secret code that determines not just how your blood behaves, but how your soul navigates the invisible realms of existence. The RH factor represents one of the most mysterious aspects of human genetics. Unlike the ABO blood groups, which developed as humanity adapted to different environments and lifestyles, the RH factor appears to trace back to something far more primal, a division that occurred in the deepest layers of human evolution. Those who carry the Rh positive factor possess a protein that links them to the vast majority of humanity, while those who are Rh negative carry what some researchers call the blood of the gods, a designation that sounds mystical but may be more literal than most people realize. If you are Rh positive, you carry within your blood the collective memory of humanity's tribal nature. Your psychological inheritance connects you to the power of group consciousness, shared beliefs, and collective action. Jung would have recognized this as carrying a stronger connection to what he called the collective unconscious, that vast reservoir of shared human experience that shapes our deepest instincts and behaviors. Rh-positive individuals often display what might be called tribal wisdom, an intuitive understanding of group dynamics, social hierarchies, and collective needs. You may find that you naturally pick up on the mood and energy of groups, that you feel more energized when surrounded by like-minded people, and that your own sense of identity is strongly influenced by your relationships and community connections. This tribal inheritance manifests in your daily life in ways you might not even recognize. You probably feel more confident when your beliefs and actions align with those around you, not because you're a follower, but because your psyche is calibrated to draw strength from collective energy. You may experience genuine distress when you're in conflict with your social group, even when you logically know you're right. But if you are Rh negative, you carry a completely different archetypal inheritance, one that Jung would have associated with what he called the individuated consciousness. You are part of roughly 15% of the population that carries blood without the Rh protein, making you essentially a genetic minority with psychological traits that reflect this biological uniqueness. Rh negative individuals often display characteristics that Jung associated with advanced psychological development: strong intuition, resistance to manipulation, fierce independence, and an almost compulsive need for authenticity. You may feel like an outsider even in groups where you should theoretically belong, not because you're antisocial, but because your psyche operates according to different principles than the majority. The psychological profile of Rh negative individuals is particularly fascinating because it often includes traits that seem almost supernatural to those who don't share them. You may have unusually vivid dreams, strong empathic abilities, or an uncanny ability to sense when someone is being dishonest. These aren't mystical gifts. They're the natural result of a nervous system that's calibrated differently from the majority of humanity. Research suggests that Rh negative individuals have different electromagnetic signatures, different reactions to certain frequencies, and even different responses to environmental stressors. Your blood literally behaves differently at the cellular level. And this biological uniqueness creates psychological patterns that can feel isolating in a world designed for Rh positive consciousness. The shadow side of being Rh negative often involves what Jung called the burden of consciousness. The psychological weight of seeing clearly in a world where most people prefer comfortable illusions. You may find yourself unable to ignore problems that others dismiss, unable to participate in social games that others find enjoyable, unable to accept explanations that don't make logical sense, even when everyone else seems satisfied with them. This can create a profound sense of loneliness that has nothing to do with how many people are in your life. You may feel like you're speaking a different language even when using the same words as others, like you're operating with a different operating system that's incompatible with the majority of human consciousness. For Rh positive individuals, the challenge often involves learning to maintain your individual identity while honoring your need for collective connection. Your strength comes from your ability to tap into group energy and shared wisdom. But your growth requires developing the courage to stand apart when your authentic self demands it. For Rh negative individuals, the challenge is often the opposite. Learning to connect meaningfully with others while maintaining your psychological independence. Your strength comes from your ability to see clearly and think independently, but your growth requires finding ways to bridge the gap between your consciousness and that of the majority without compromising your authenticity. Understanding your Rh factor provides crucial insight into your deepest psychological needs and tendencies. It explains why certain environments feel nurturing while others feel draining, why some people energize you while others exhaust you, and why certain approaches to personal growth work for you while others feel completely wrong. The Rh factor represents the final piece of the blood type puzzle, the element that determines not just how you interact with the world, but how you process the invisible energies that Jung knew were crucial to psychological health and spiritual development. Whether you're positive or negative, understanding this aspect of your archetypal inheritance is essential for living in alignment with your deepest nature. The uncomfortable truth you can no longer ignore. Now you know the secret that flows through your veins, a biological blueprint that shapes your deepest thoughts, drives your unconscious behaviors, and explains why you've always felt different from others in ways you could never quite articulate. This isn't pseudoscience or mystical speculation. This is the uncomfortable reality that your personality, your struggles, and your potential have been encoded in your blood since before your first breath. The question that remains is perhaps the most unsettling of all. If your archetypal patterns are written in your biology, how much of what you call free will is actually just your blood type expressing itself through your choices? Are you truly choosing your path, or are you simply following ancient programming that runs deeper than conscious thought? Jung understood that awareness is the first step toward genuine freedom. You cannot transcend what you refuse to acknowledge. Now that you've seen the archetypal forces that move through your blood, you face a choice that will define the rest of your psychological evolution. Will you continue to be unconsciously driven by these patterns? Or will you learn to work with them consciously to become who you were truly meant to be? Your blood type is not your destiny. It's your starting point. The real journey begins now.